Do you want to know what to do after a life science degree if you hate lab work? Good, because lab work is not the only way to build career in this domain. And most life science students have no idea how many real opportunities exist outside the lab today. In the last 5-10 years, healthcare and life science have changed. Every company and startup now runs on AI, data, digital systems, documentation, and operations. And they need people who understand biology without touching a pipette. If you are in your final year, already graduated, and you don't want to go down the usual path of completing BSc and then going for MSc and then PhD, then you must watch this video till the end before you take that big decision, because getting into that lane will cost your time and effort, and more importantly, you will stay away from the industry while others will gain work experience that actually decide the salary, growth, and lifestyle. Because if you are a life science graduate who doesn't want lab work, you can enter these 6 healthcare domains where there is massive future scope, real demand, and in some cases, very little competition, because students are simply unaware these roles exist. I will explain what realistic roles you can aim for and how your career will progress in the future. And none of these roles require you to work in lab. I would like to add one more thing. If you have clarity on pursuing the research path and are genuinely interested, then going for MSc and PhD is a route for you. Okay, with that clarity, let's get started. The first domain we'll discuss today about is telemedicine, virtual care, clinical operations. Telemedicine is one of the fastest growing areas in healthcare. Patients now consult doctors over video calls, upload online reports, receive prescriptions digitally, and schedule tests without stepping into a hospital. To make this entire system work smoothly, companies need people who can sit between the patients, the doctors, and the digital platform. This is where life science graduates enter. You will get roles like telemedicine coordinator, care coordinator, telehealth operations associate, or remote patient monitoring ops associate. Your job is not to treat medically. Your job is to make sure the care process runs without friction. You collect patient history and reports before the consult. You schedule reminders and follow ups. You update electronic health records, also known as EHR or EMR, systems properly. You coordinate with labs and pharmacy. You handle escalations and documentations. You track cases in simple dashboards. You are running the operational side of virtual healthcare. And you are a strong fit there because you already understand medical terminology. You understand prescriptions, reports, and patient context, something non science struggled with. Companies with Apollo 24 by 7, Practo, Tata 1mg, Medibuddy regularly hire for these roles. You may start at 22,000 to 35,000 per month, but the real growth happens because you are inside a digital healthcare system from day one. With 2-3 years, you move from care coordination to clinical operations executive, then clinical operations lead. From there, you move into product operations or program roles where salaries cross 10 to 18 LPA. Another domain is medical AI, clinical data annotation, or AI validation. This domain sits at the intersection of healthcare and AI. Before any AI system can detect pneumonia on an X ray, a tumor on a CT scan, or abnormalities in an ECG, humans must first label thousands of those images and clinical records correctly. That labeled data is called ground truth. And this is where life science graduates are hired in large numbers. You enter through roles like medical image annotator, clinical EHR annotator, or medical data annotator. On a daily basis, you mark abnormalities on scans, label ECG patterns, tag clinical notes, and follow strict annotation guidelines. It's detailed, repetitive, and process driven work. But here's what most people miss: you are not just labeling images, you are literally helping build the intelligence of a medical AI system. If the data is labeled poorly, the AI learns poorly. If the data is labeled precisely, the AI becomes more precise. You are teaching the AI what is normal, what is abnormal, and what is tumor, what is noise, and what is an error. That's why this role exists. You are a good fit because you understand anatomy, pathology, medical terminology, and how to read reports in context. A non science graduate needs weeks of training to do that. You can do it naturally. Companies like Cure AI, SigTriple, Nirami Healthcare Analytics, and G Healthcare hire regularly for this kind of roles. You may start around 20,000 to 35,000 per month, but this is not a role to stay in. This is a gateway into the medical AI ecosystem. Within months, you move to annotation QA to a reviewer role, then into clinical AI validation role, and eventually into medical AI ops or data ops roles, where salaries move into 8 to 15 lakh per annum. No lab work, no coding required to enter, but you step directly into one of the fastest growing areas in healthcare. Another domain is healthcare data, clinical data, or real world evidence, also known as RWE. This data is about making medical data usable. Hospitals, CROs, insurers, and pharma companies sit on massive volumes of patient data, lab reports, prescriptions, discharge summaries, trial data, EHR entries, but this data is messy, inconsistent, and full of human errors. Someone has to sit between the raw medical records and decision makers and make that data reliable. That's where life science graduates enter. You start in roles like clinical data coordinator, clinical data management associate, healthcare data associate, or RWE associate. Your work is practical. You open patient records and trial entries and start noticing what others miss. A lab value that doesn't match the diagnosis, a missing field in a CRF, or a dosage entered incorrectly, dates that do not make sense, you flag it, correct it, validate it, and structure it. You turn dirty medical data into trustworthy medical information. And this is extremely valuable because pharma companies use this clean data to judge drug performance. Hospitals use it to study outcomes. Insurers will use it to detect fraud, and CROs use it to maintain trial integrity. Pure data graduate cannot easily do this because they don't know what a medical record is supposed to look like. You do. Companies like IQVIA, Parexel, LabCorp hire for this regularly, along with hospital, data teams, and healthcare companies. You may start around 25,000 to 40,000 per month, but within a year, once you understand how clinical data flows from hospitals to CROs to pharma to regulators, you add one skill: advanced Excel, maybe basic SQL, maybe a dashboard tool. Now you are no longer a clinical data coordinator. You become a healthcare data analyst or RWE analyst, where salaries move into 8 to 16 lakhs per annum without ever stepping into a lab. Another domain is clinical informatics, EHR, HL7, FHIR, healthcare systems. So, this domain is about how healthcare systems talk to each other. Hospitals, labs, pharmacies, telemedicine apps, and monitoring devices all store data in different formats. Lab reports sit in one system. Prescriptions will sit in another. Patient history is somewhere else. Devices at home generate data in their own way. Someone has to make all this connect to patient information flows correctly across systems. That's clinical informatics. You enter through roles like EHR executive, EHR data specialist, clinical informatics associate, or healthcare data integrity executive. At the beginning, you work with patient records, lab values, EHR data formats. You start understanding how medical data is stored and how it needs to be structured so it can move between the platforms. You are not coding. You are not doing IT support. You are understanding how medical data is organized, mapped, and transferred. For example, a lab result from a lab software must appear correctly in a hospital EHR. Prescription written during a teleconsultant must reflect in the patient's history. A monitoring device at home must push vitals into the doctor's dashboard. This mapping flows standards like HL7, FHIR, and this is where life science graduates have an edge. Because to map medical data properly, you must understand what that data actually means. A software engineer sees fields. You see clinical meaning. Companies like Practo, Tata 1mg, and large hospital chains hire for these roles. You may start around 30,000 to 45,000 per month. Within a couple of years, once you understand healthcare data flow, you move into HL7, FHIR specialist roles or clinical informatics analyst roles, where salaries move into 10 to 18 lakhs per annum. Apart from that, there is another domain which is regulatory affairs, medical writing, SAMD documentation. This domain is a documentation and compliance backbone for healthcare. No drug, no device, no health app, and no AI tool can be used unless it is properly documented, structured, and approved by regulators. And that documentation has to be extremely clear, scientific, and precise. That's where life science graduates come in. You enter through roles like medical writer, documentation executive, regulatory affairs associate, or SAMD documentation associate. On the surface, that looks like writing work, but in reality, you are reading clinical data, product specifications, research materials, and converting all of it into SOPs, summaries, dossiers, device files, and compliance documents that companies need for approval and audits. Now, this role runs on clarity of thinking. You are naturally comfortable reading scientific content, understanding medical terminology, and following structured formats. Someone from a non life science background struggles here, but you don't. These roles exist across pharma companies, medical device firms, CROs, and increasingly inside healthcare and AI startups because softwares used in healthcare is now treated as a software as a medical device and needs proper documentation. Organizations like IQVIA and many digital healthcare companies hire regularly for this role. You may start around 25,000 to 45,000 per month, but what you learn here is powerful. You begin to understand how approval happens, then how clinical claims are justified, and how healthcare products are legally structured. Over time, you grow into regulatory specialist or compliance led roles where salaries comfortably move into 10 to 20 lakhs per annum. Still no lab work. Still using your life science knowledge in a high value way. Another domain I really want to talk about is edtech or scientific content, curriculum, digital marketing, entrepreneurial path. This domain doesn't look like a science job at first, it uses your science knowledge every single day. The tech companies, they have health platforms, pharma brands, and education startups constantly create courses, study materials, explainer content, scripts, question banks, blogs, landing pages, and videos around biology and healthcare. and they all face the same problem. Writers can write English, designers can design, marketers can market, but very few people can understand science and communicate it clearly. You can. You enter through roles like content writer, curriculum designer, instructional designer, subject matter expert, academic associate, program associate. In the beginning, you may write lesson content, edit modules, review scripts, or build course structures. It feels simple, but you are actually learning how knowledge is packed, how learners think, and how digital education products are created. Healthcare related edtech companies hire regularly for this, along with health startups and pharma brands. You may start around 20,000 to 40,000 per month. But as you work, you naturally learn SEO, content strategy, design tools, scripting, and digital marketing. Within few years, you move into content strategy, learning experience designer, or digital marketing roles in the science and health niche, where salaries move into 8 to 15 lakhs per annum. This path also opens a very entrepreneurial door because if you can explain science for a company, you can do it for yourself too. YouTube blogging, freelancing, consulting, or building your own educational product. You did not leave your domain, you just used it in a completely different way. Another domain is establishing career paths. Now, while these new age domains are growing fast, they are not the only options available to you. There are also some very establishments, career paths in the healthcare that have been hiring life science graduates for years. But most students never really understand what those jobs actually involve. These are the roles most life science students keep hearing about from seniors, teachers, and institutions: clinical research, pharmacovigilance, clinical data management, and quality assurance. The big problem is students know only the names. They don't know what the work actually looks like, how much it pays at the start, or how career really grows over the time. Let us understand clinical research. This is where new drugs and medical devices are tested on patients before they ever reach the market. Hospitals conduct the trials, CROs manage them, and pharma companies sponsor them. In between all of this, someone has to manage patient records, trial documents, and protocol adherence reporting. That's where you come in. You usually enter as a clinical research coordinator, clinical trial assistant, or a CRA or a trainee. You are not in lab. You are inside the hospital and trial sites, making sure the trial process runs correctly in the real world. You might start around 20 to 25,000 per month, but as you gain experience, you move into the role of clinical research associate, where you monitor multiple trial sites. From there, you grow into a senior CRA role and eventually into clinical operations or product management roles, where salaries comfortably move to 15 lakhs per annum. Apart from that, second field is pharmacovigilance. It is also known as drug safety. Once a drug is available in the market company, they are legally required to track whether the patients are facing side effects. This responsibility sits with pharmacovigilance team. You enter as a drug safety associate or a PV associate. Your job is to read adverse events, reports coming from hospitals, patients, and assess how serious they are, document them into global safety systems, and ensure properly reporting to authorities. This work is documentation heavy and process driven, and life science graduates fits naturally because you understand medical case narratives without struggle. You may start from a 20 to a 25 to 30 per month, but over a period of time, you move into senior case review roles, signal detection, and drug safety specialist positions where salaries grow from a 7 to a 15 lakhs per range. Apart from that, the third role is the clinical data management role. The role sits with very close to clinical research but focuses entirely on data. When trial happens, huge amount of data are generated and someone must ensure that this data is clean, complete and accurate, and it is entered into the systems like EDC and CRF platforms. You enter as a clinical data coordinator or CDM associate. You spend your time checking entries, spotting discrepancies, correcting errors, and maintaining the integrity of trial data. You might begin around 25 to 40, but this role becomes very powerful when you add skills like advanced Excel or basic SQL. That's when you naturally move into healthcare data or RWE analyst roles, where the salaries move into 8 to 16 lakhs per annum range. Quality assurance is another role, which is also known as quality control or compliance roles. Many students assume QA/QC means working in a lab. In reality, a large part of work is documentation, SOP checks, batch record reviews, audit preparations, compliance tracking inside pharma and device companies. You enter as a QA executive, IPQA, or documentation executive. Your job role is to ensure that processes are being followed exactly as per the guidelines. You may start around 22 to 25 per month. As you gain experience, you move into senior QA, compliance, and validation roles, eventually growing into QA manager or compliance lead positions where salaries reach from 18 to 14 lakhs per annum. When you look at all these domains together, one thing becomes very, very clear. A life science degree is not limited to labs, higher studies, or traditional paths you have been told about. The healthcare industry has expanded into data, AI, and digital platforms, documentation, operations, education, and systems. And you already have the foundation to step into these areas. The real issue is not capability, it's awareness and direction. And once you understand where the industry is heading, the next question becomes, how do you build skills that are relevant to this shift? That is exactly where our intelligent healthcare program comes in. These courses are focused on AI, automation, and analytics in healthcare, helping you understand the technology layer that is shaping all the domains you saw in this video. You will find the course link in the description, explore it, and if you need more clarity, speak to our counselors. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.
Visit us today www.clinilaunchresearch.in